Ask Lindsay. Thank you. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Christina to welcome our first presenters.
Okay, well, hello again, everybody. Christina McMahon, Juvenile Department Director here in Clackamas County. And I really want to just take a moment to give a big shout out to Alice Perry, our Assistant Director here at the Juvenile Department. Alice, Alice did a lot of the work to plan this and make sure that we have our wonderful partners here today to share information about the great programs and services they're doing in our county. So thank you so much, Alice. We also have from our team, Tiffany West also deserves a big shout out. She's done a lot of logistics work, and thank you for arranging lunch for us, Tiffany. And over here at this back table, we had to sit them in the back because we never know how they're going to behave. We have our division managers for the juvenile department, and I just want to let you know we've given you all a packet here. We're not going to go over all of these materials, but on the left side, you have the agenda for today. And you also have a handout about our mission statement and a functional org chart, which talks, this is a colorful one. The blue division is Accountability and Reformation Division, which Tracy Freeman, who's masquerading as a Beaver believer today. She's really a duck. She heads up that division. So the things in the blue area are under Tracy's purview. If you have questions down the road, just want to let you know that. And then Clint McClellan over here at the same table with Tracy is our juvenile division manager in charge of our youth, family, stakeholder, and community collaboration division. And what's exciting is you're going to get to hear from Latino Network here in a moment, but Clint and Tracy, within the work that they oversee, would both work with Latino Network. So there's a lot of crossover between our programs and our interactions with our community partners. So anyway, just wanted to take a moment to thank my staff and appreciate the tour and the work you've all done to help us get ready today. And very excited that Edgar and Jimena agreed to be with us today. We were laughing when we were putting together the agenda, these long titles. But we didn't want to cut it short because we love them. The Jimena is the Youth Empowerment and Violence Prevention Division Director for Latino Network, and Edgar is the Associate Director of that same group. I won't repeat it again, but they have done incredible work bringing services to our county and collaborating with us, and most of all, the passion, the love, the care, the compassion that they and their team bring to the young people and the families and our school partners and our folks out in the communities, the victims. We just feel very blessed that we get to have them working hand in hand with us in Clackamas County. So with that, I will turn it over to you to do your presentation, and thank everybody for being here.
Yeah, no,
Yes, I will now that I have, I thought that was a moment too.
Be just a moment. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, so welcome. Adrian, it's great to see you. I'm glad we were able to connect you in. And we have new members who the first time meeting with our Juvenile Justice Committee as full-blown council members. Delta Ferguson.
Delta's a gas tank.
Oh, Delta. Okay, and Kim.
Kim Lay, yeah.
Kim Lay. And then.
She's saying hi.
Oh, hi, Kim.
Hi, everyone. So sorry, I would love to have been there in person, but COVID had other plans for me. So something from afar.
And then the Honorable Judge Collins is on with us.
Committee.
And she is our new committee member on full council. Okay, oh, great. Okay. Welcome, Judge Collins. Okay. All right. Did I do
Yeah, you did.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Anya, for keeping me in line. Okay.
No, it's
Organic meat, organic. Take us away.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, Christina and Ali, for inviting us today to be here. And so I know we're a little bit over. I'm going to share our presentation, and so I'm going to talk about the Latino network. I'm going to talk about our division, the work we do in our division, and then Edgar Cuellar Rubio. Christina, you forgot the Rubio. Even longer names. Just to add to the long names and all of that, it's Edgar Cuellar Rubio. I'm joking here. So Edgar Cuellar Rubio is going to talk about our programs with Rich, our diversion program in Clackamas County, share some of our success stories, and share some of our other programs in partnership with the Juvenile department. So let's dive into not this, but Latino Network. Okay. So Latino Network was, some of you have heard this presentation. I'm not going to go super deep into it, but Latino Network was founded in 1996 by some community members who gathered around to advocate for the growing needs of the Latino community in the Portland metro area. And we are getting near 30 years of being around the community and increasing our services, our programs, and all the offerings that we have for the community at large. I have some numbers to share. This last year, we served nearly 12,000 community members through programs and services focusing on education, economic justice, early childhood, advocacy and leadership, health and wellness, our division youth empowerment and violence prevention, community building, and arts and culture. We provide direct services and programs to youth across 62 programs in all of our divisions, in all of our agencies. And our services reach across 8 Senate districts and 11 House districts. Our operating budget for this fiscal year, 2024, is over $21 million. And we currently employ 252 staff. This is just to speak of the scaling of our program. So that tiny vision 30 years ago is now a dream come true, right? We have programs in 4 counties in Oregon: Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah, and Deschutes County in Eastern Oregon. Throughout the pandemic, I think a lot of programs have to pivot, to use the word that somebody used, and scale up and really raise up to the challenge. And we did that too. I want to share our health and wellness department. Used to be just a program included in one of our divisions, and now it's our own standalone department. We're training community health workers. We partner with healthcare providers. We have a dental van providing emergency dental care services for our community who is not insured across the metro area. And we're also doing OHP enrollment and SNAP benefits enrollment throughout the Portland metro area. So I think this is the benefit of partnering with community providers, that we can pivot, that we can be flexible, and then we can step up to the plate to really address the needs of our community. Right. Okay. And you can see Ali's there too in that picture.
Front row center.
So I am the Youth Empowerment and Violence Prevention Division is a part of Latino Network, tasked with the job of supporting those at risk of entering the juvenile legal system or already in the legal system. So we offer a range of services from prevention, mentoring, family navigation, diversion services. And our division is one of the first ones in Latino Network who's been successfully partnering with government. We've been continuously partnering originally with Multnomah County for 12 years, and now with Clackamas for 5, offering diversion services for those youth coming into the system. And finding avenues for them to meaningfully connect with their communities and their families and their schools and stay away from the justice system. At the center of our work is the building of relationships, building meaningful relationships, and we hold this very near to our heart. We currently, in our division, we have 33 professionals, from mentors, credible messengers, peer parent mentors, family navigators, case managers, and we all come from different walks of life, different range of experiences, training, certifications, all kinds of backgrounds. So it's quite a team of caring adults, wrapping our arms around our youth and our families so they can stay healthy, productive, and find their path to success. That's it. Now let's talk about Rich.
We're going to talk about RICH, and the acronym stands for Restoring Individuals, Community, and Hope. And this is our diversion program that we've been partnering with Clackamas County since 2019, and got a couple pictures up there of youth and staff participating in some community volunteering. We would like to add as far as photos go, a lot of the work is one-on-one and to protect confidentiality. These are a few of the photos that we're able to put up there. In future presentations, we can make sure that we have more of this stuff. Just to share a few of those, got some participants up there, and we'll dive into what the RICH program does. What are the components of the program? So what the RICH program is it provides opportunities for youth who've had their first police interaction in repairing any of the harm that they may have caused in the community, and they get connected to services in the community, get connected to other community partners in the community, reconnecting to schools, building stronger relationships with the families, and ultimately moving forward, creating goals for themselves and their families to move forward. Some of the values and practices that we have pulled in RICH are down below. So we partner with families. The RICH coordinators partner with the youth and family from the very beginning to work on and talk about the incident that occurred in the community and ways to repair that harm. And in addition to those conversations about finding ways, creative ways to repair that harm, youth and families get connected to services in the community based on needs that are identified and needs assessment that the coordinators complete at the beginning of services. Relationships, just how Humana was talking about the relationships being at the center of our work. We for the RICH program to be successful these past 2 years is not only building relationships with our families, but also with the cities, police chiefs, schools, other youth serving agencies, and of course the Clackamas Juvenile Department. At the center of all this is, in order for us to find and make sure that we're sending youth to the appropriate services in the community, we have to make sure that we're building those connections in each of the communities. So from Sandy all the way to Molalla, here, in Oregon City and Clackamas, our coordinators are spread around the county, making sure that we're creating relationships with those, agencies in those communities to make sure that youth are connected to services in the area. Restorative justice is another value we uphold. We use restorative-based practices, positive youth development. We honor all cultural backgrounds. We function through a no wrong door policy, meaning we don't turn away anyone due to their background or cultural, values. We don't turn away anybody. We serve all families from all youth from all cultural backgrounds. And at the center of that, we cultural values and honor all of those differences. And we serve in our program, RICH Diversion Program, we serve families of all the communities in Clackamas County. Another component to the work that we do is our circles, again, connected to the restorative based practices. we provide circles for youth to come to be able to connect. This circle that we have is called Juvenile. In English, it's translated into Noble Youth. This is a curriculum from our partners out of California. They're called the Natural Compadres Network. And what this curriculum does is it touches on character development. One component of the program is youth walk away with tools on how what it means to be a person with character, a person who sticks to their word. And this is one of the pieces of the program where youth come together and can walk away with some skills. And I'll connect a success story here in a second that a youth is able to share about what that experience was for them. We have a few success stories here. The font is really small, so I did my best to make sure that I captured what the youth wrote with their handwriting. So I'll read this first one. This is from a Rich Diversion participant. And they say, Rich and Juvenile help me realize things that don't just affect me, but others around me. The importance of making good and safe choices play a big role today and in the future. It was a good breath of fresh air, and having a safe place like this makes me want to do better in the coming days. I enjoyed today so much with the laughter and supportive group. This has been one of my best days. Super enjoyable. We also made sure to capture a quote from a parent, and this was a little bit shorter. The Rich program has been really healing for our family. I am very appreciative of this program, and I'm really glad this opportunity was given to my son. And lastly, building those relationships with community partners in each of the communities. We want to highlight Ant Farm, which are located out in Sandy and now have an Estacada location. And the reason why we want to highlight Ant Farm is we also want to make sure as youth are completing the program that they're building community in their communities. And Ant Farm has been great at not only creating spaces for our coordinators to meet the families, but also providing opportunities as they're completing our program to be connected to service learning, community service, and also skill building around workforce development. So wanted to highlight that there, and some great successes that we've been able to accomplish since 2019 with our diversion program. I was going to zoom in for me. I guess I didn't have to.
And these are some of the other programs that we have in Zacatecas County in partnership with the Juvenile Department. So we have our Spirit program, our diversion that Edgar was just talking about, the Rich. We're going to start we're going to start the Spirit with I'm going to say it wrong because I always say it wrong. The JIAC. I always say it backwards, so apologies for that. And our Heart Family Navigation program for youth who are currently on supervision with the Juvenile Department. So we've been able to round out services to continue to support more families, and support them at every turn.
And I can add a little bit more. As I was putting together the slides, I tried to make sure to put these together in a way where the more upstream programs came up first. So I want to highlight a little bit about Rich SPIRT, right? Another acronym there. SPIRT stands for Screening, Youth Intervention, and Referral to. And this is the school-based version of part of Rich. Well, what we do here is we're partnering with Gladstone High School. And in this program, youth take a universal kind of point in time screening that flags for mental health needs, substance use needs, and also highlight some of their strengths and values. And from that screening, youth are connected to an adult in their school building that discuss the results of that screening. So if Jimena was a student, she'd be able to complete the screening. It takes about 15 minutes. It's on an online platform. And myself as an adult in the school building can see the report and have a conversation around what was highlighted in the screening to connect Jimena to services in the community that her and her family may be in support, in need of. So this is a more upstream version, but part of the program to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the youth early and not so much further down the avenue. So Rich Esper, it's a great program. We've been able to make some great connections with Gladstone High School and surrounding community partners around the area. And we provide family navigation. So the component there, after you get connected to an adult, the school, we have a process where the school refers those youth to our family navigator. That is in the school. We actually have an office space. It's more of an actual classroom size that this is this big. And that family navigator connects with families, finds that they can meet at the school in the community, and also it's a space for us to hold. We also hold enrollment circles there, so character building. We've had a few cohorts already, and when there's the graduation, we invite the principal, the counselors, and they're there. You know, we make sure that we're providing spaces for joy and excitement, and they see the coordinators, they see the teachers there at that time of graduation. Of course, we talked about rich diversion, and in the JIAC Esper, this will be, we'll be receiving referrals from the JIAC, where youth may not be having any more formal involvement with the juvenile department. So we'll have a family navigator supporting those families to resources in their community. And heart, healing, engagement, advocacy, reciprocity, and training. This is our newest program with Clackamas Juvenile Department, where we have a family navigator that supports youth on probation and their family as well with family navigation. So again, meeting families where they're at and connecting them to services in their community. And again, working with all backgrounds in this program as well.
Could you, Edgar,
Yeah.
could you talk about the red, yellow, green of the school-based Esper and the JIC Esper?
Yeah, and in the report, when youth complete the screening, they're prioritized into different areas. So there's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Sometimes correlated with color, the green, yellow, and red. We normally try to use the tier system. As far as tier 1, these are youth where the screener identified no flags around as needs around substance use, mental health use. However, youth are still connected to support systems in their school. Tier 2, there's some flagging around anxiety, for example, some supports around mental health. And tier 3 of kind of immediate needs, sometimes that is suicidal ideation. So within the report, things are flagged, so the team is prepared on how to best support that youth and what the best support the process moving forward. So that is in both that component of the program is embedded in Rich Esper and the JIAC. So yeah, it's a great the platform where it lives in. It provides kind of that in-time screening, that point in time information for adults to be able to partner with the youth and family and identify a good plan for next steps.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we made sure to leave time for questions. So opening the floor.
Yeah, please don't feel rushed. Please take time if you have questions. It's the opportunity. We don't often get time with programs, so please take the opportunity.
I do have one question. I'm gonna probably say this wrong, so I apologize. Juvenile, that program?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's connected to your more front-end diversion type stuff, youth that you're serving, and I'm wondering if that program is really appropriate for that level of youth, or if it's appropriate in any point along youth involvement in juvenile justice.
Yeah, it's that program is really open to any point along that process. And we in the school, of course, we have the students in the school have completed the screening. It could be, tier 3, tier 2, tier 1. It's an invitation, right? It's not where you're obligated to participate. It's an invitation for you to come in and hold the space together around character development. So a lot of the principles that are embedded in Juvenile are really things that even as an adult I can take away. So that's a great question. And just kind of the short answer is, yeah, it can really be applied to any type of intervention. intervention.
Yeah, we've used it for our higher level of interventions as well, the groups for some of our higher needs as well.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Any questions?
I just wanted to share with everybody that in this, on the right side of this green folder, there are infographics and brochures. You used this one,
Yep.
as one of your pictures that has more, detail in the interest of time, on all of the programs that Edgar and Jimena mentioned. Our HEART program, which is that family support and advocacy program, Rich, the diversion program, a couple of different ones on HEART, one we give to the families, one we use more with stakeholders. The SBIRT program, you see the red, yellow, green here. So if you want to look at more about this, you have access to it. We thought, double-sided one pagers typically fit, my intention span. So we also shared a copy of, Tacoma County puts out a magazine a few times a year. And last year they featured, we were just kicking off the school-based SBIRT, and they featured a little article about the program. And some of our friends here were quoted in this article. So what else do we have? Oh, there's other things in here that don't have anything to do with Latino Network, but just wanted to make sure you knew that there was more information in your packet. And we also have hot off the press, thank you, Clint, a brand new infographic on the Juvenile Intake and Assessment Center. And I know you all just had a tour, but we've got a summary about what we're trying to accomplish and how we do it on the back. So anyway, great job. I love it when I go out of town and I come back to these. Yeah. So anyway,
I have a quick question. I know we have some time on it, but I know some people, sometimes people think like COVID's over and it's not. But Jimena, I don't know if you can share a little bit about the work that you got charged with within the agency for getting some of those funds out to families. And we talk about pivoting. Sometimes we have very structured programs, but in pivoting, another way to support families that may already be in crisis around juvenile justice or other things, and then other ways that network is able to support or has been able to support.
Yeah, I think one of the first examples that come to mind when COVID hit and all the kids were starting to do school remotely, and the schools were giving out the Google Chromebooks, right? The Chromebooks. And we had a lot of families who were not even feeling safe going around school. There was a lot of fear going around school. And we deployed our staff to go and start giving out Chromebooks to students so they could attend classes. Just from that very, like that, this is day 2 after COVID hit, right? Like the following, we talk about COVID hit as if it was like one thing, but like when we went online, like this is where we were, right there at the front lines, not even knowing how to work on Zoom, but already on the ground, making sure that kids had a way of logging in into their classes so they wouldn't fall behind, right? So that was, I think, one. And then all the other ways in which many communities were not a part of our public health care system, right? They had no access to health insurance or unemployment insurance. And so all of our community-based organizations became the de facto providers of support, right? Became the public support, actually. And so we together in partnership with our local health departments that did a lot of community health clinics, home visitations, remote home visitations, did a lot of client assistance pretty quick, rental assistance, vaccination clinics, testing. Our office became a testing site pretty quick after, like weeks after. So all of these pivoting, really quickly to respond to the need. So I think just being very nimble and flexible and being very connected to the pulse of communities in general, right? So is that what you were? Yeah. And also, I think our challenge now is how do we sustain this infrastructure that we built in such a quick time, right? So now we're saying, oh, COVID's over, thank you. And but no, it's here, it's being built. Let's sustain it, right? Let's make it be meaningful. So that's where we're at now, trying to keep it up so we can continue to support communities.
Communities still need the COVID relief funds, right? Like this idea that COVID is over is really out there, and I think that's like coming from a federal level, but it's not, right? Like our communities are still dealing with these issues over and over again, and so I think it's this is where like Latino Network really thrives, is because we are in the schools, we are helping with utility and rent assistance, and then also community health workers, like trying to bridge the gap between the healthcare system and folks who maybe don't speak English, you know, and just the fear that's there as well. So, yeah.
Any plans for expansion into other counties?
Let's stop.
Yeah, so I do have a question. So along those lines, there are other Latino networks listed. So for example, to my neighbor, they have the River Latino Network, very significantly different. And so I was curious if there's like association, or if it's a broader national movement, or what?
So no, I don't know what other Latino networks are there. We do have our program in Deschutes County is an affiliate program. So our early childhood department went and trained a community-based organization there with their program model, and we support technical assistance to their community-based organization. So that is what we're doing, but we're exclusively at this point in the Portland metro area in the Tri-County. So I don't know why is this Latino network in Hood River. Maybe they are maybe they are a people company, because when I used to be a coordinator for our diversion program, people will say, I already have cable service. I don't need a Latino network. So maybe that's the Latino.
I don't know what frustrating people know. So they have a radio show. I know that. And so where that piece
Yes.
is into that. One of the leaders happens to be the office manager of our district attorney's office. So I was just curious.
All right. No, so the Latino network, the community-based organization, it's us here and the affiliate program in Deschutes County. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, sorry.
So no, I'll just, so I found them. There's a River Latino Network. They have a gallery full of pictures. So it's probably a different type of organization, but I don't know if there's some intellectual property challenges.
Well, they're not affiliated with us. They're not a.
But that's okay. Sure.
So they do more advocacy on the college age and access to education.
So we do have a 501c3 arm that does do work in rural areas. And so I think that what you're talking about is a different entity, but we are still working like in the Dallas area.
The couple of comments I wanted to make first, I was just that was an interesting keywords conversation. So for the YDO council members, we fund in part, of course, Latino Network through Clackamas County Juvenile Crime Prevention Funding, through Washington County Juvenile Crime Prevention Funding, as well as through Multnomah County. So the plans that you've reviewed, remember, was question 6, Lawrence. So that's what, as a result, is funded. Those are the type of services in the communities. So to your question, put it in your plan, and maybe Latino Network will come and provide service for your kids in Lynn County. But now the last point I wanted to make, point is like, this is a piece of trivia, but important. So I have a computer with me, so I don't have to carry all those, paper files around. So while you were presenting, I started looking at some really old archived files in the computer from fiscal year 8, 9, and 10. Those are federal funds, formula grant funds that were awarded to Clackamas County to support diversion panels. They didn't have a fancy name like we do now. They were just diversion plans. And the point was that the county was looking at disproportionate minority contact, and especially about Latino youth. So what would they have discovered that they didn't have anybody Spanish speaking on the diversion panels. So the federal funds went into funding positions that would hire Spanish speaking diversion workers. And so that's how it kind of probably started. So I have all those files. And now, Christina, it's to you. That was an award. It was a paper one. At that time, for whatever reason, it was not email, but the OJDP issued an award for excellence in disproportionate minority concept reduction to Clackamas County. And that was like nationally announced at the national conference. And then Ellen, who was your predecessor, and I kind of were like putting their award away from each other. Because no, it was one piece of paper. I don't know how it is. So I don't have it because I think Ellen won. Because it was, it was Clackamas County effort, which just gave the funds. So you might find it in your archive somewhere.
I haven't seen it, but we do have a closet full of
Yeah, so maybe.
ancient materials by the men's room. For those who can visit
So it's,
that closet.
the date on the box will be like 2010 maybe.
That's funny you bring that up because like a lot of good things, I think there ends up being mission drift, right? I got here in 2016. We did an RFP for our diversion program in spring of 2019. Latino Network submitted a proposal, but before that, the way things had drifted, we had these diversion panels, but I was a little blown away when I came from Multnomah County to here, and I'm learning about the lay of the land. And if you were a Latino, so I want to be really clear and make sure that everyone understands. Latino Network serves all kids, not just Latino kids. But back when I got here, if you were a Latino kid in Clackamas County, you didn't get to go to the diversion panel necessarily in your hometown. They had these in the 11 towns and cities. You had to either go to the one that was located in North County, they called it, or South County. You had to travel out of your home community if you were a Latino youth to go to one of those courts. And I said, whoa, that does not seem right to me that a kid from X community has to go up to Milwaukee that they have no connection to. And when we put together the RFP, we put in, because it's hard for providers to find bilingual folks, and in our county, the Spanish speaking population was growing and it continues to grow. So in our RFP, we put down a preference for having bilingual Spanish speaking capability and as a part of regular staff, because even though you're talking about how they gave them.
It's like it's the beginning.
Yeah, but it had drifted because they couldn't retain Spanish
Well, it
speaking.
should, right, it's
folks.
progress, it should all be. getting
Yeah,
better.
so this model that we went with, everybody has the ability that's involved in the program to be able to assist and support monolingual families without them having to physically travel to another location in the county. And this is a big county, so depending where you live. So anyway, that was a really big, in our opinion, in terms of equity and being able to have access to equitable services. That was a big change for the better for us. So,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna make sure that I ask Judge Collins and Kim, if you have any questions online. And Adrian, sorry.
No questions. I'm a fan of Latino Network. I've been a part of several organizations that have provided funding. So one being the Nike Community Impact Fund, did some ballet folklorico with them. So no, I'm definitely a fan.
Great. Okay. So I think I've been able to read the chat all along, but are there any additional, I know that Deltra had asked for the email, and so we got that done. Have there been any other questions in the chat? No. Okay.
I'll add one more thing now that Adrienne shared about the ballet folklorico, and this is our folkloric dance troupe. I don't know if you've seen it. We did a lot of commercials for billboards for the Oregon Health Plan during the pandemic, and some TV commercials. But when they first started at Latino Network, they were like bouncing around different departments. And then a few years ago, I said, they have to be here with youth empowerment and violence prevention, because violence prevention also looks like joy. And so intentionally, they are under our division. They are part of our violence prevention efforts. They are how we celebrate who we are, how we elicit hope and inspire families. And so they are part of the program you're hearing about today. So yeah, they are part of they're not education, they're not health and wellness, they're violence prevention, because violence prevention is culture and belonging and joy. And so they're with us.
Right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today and celebrating with us, starting at noon today to hear from the judge. So thank you for coming and participating in that, doing the tour with us and joining and having food with us. So, okay. Anya, I'm gonna check with you.
Thank you, and yes.
We are. So I'm gonna lay a tiny bit of the groundwork as Lindsay pulls up the slide deck for the juvenile justice system. What we realized in kind of the last few months is leading up to January of 2020, the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee was meeting in full form every month, upwards of 20 to 25 people every month. And we were working diligently on the juvenile detention guidelines. And we were up to our eyebrows really working together on that. Then COVID hit, and we have had a lot of different transitions and turnover, and really thought it would be a good time to kind of reground what is the juvenile justice system. When we're talking about diversion, and we're talking about community partners coming with us, there's been a lot of conversation in the last legislative session about a juvenile justice policy group. And so there's also been some focus on some other groups coming alongside to provide either policy direction, guidance, or input. And so it seemed like it was just a good moment to take a deep breath to understand Oregon's juvenile justice system. And to do that, I've had the lucky ability to partner with Tori for the Association of Counties. And so he put the slide deck together. I did not, just updated it for today's date. But you want to take off with it?
Take off with it.
Yeah. So we can go to the next slide, Linda. Thank you.
But don't lose your door.
So in part of this conversation, it's really talking about the Oregon Juvenile Directors Department Association. And so our current leadership is Christina McMahon, is our current president. Matt Witherall, who's here to my left, is our president-elect. Molly Rogers is our past president. And Lacey De La Cruz is our treasurer. And so, and just the leadership that we currently have in our organization, and that encompasses all 36 counties. Each county has a juvenile department. And some of those counties are under a community corrections model, and so they may have a director that oversees both juvenile and adults, and then others, for example, my county, Mason County, we're kind of a standalone department, and so we oversee that. My boss is my county commissioners, and I report directly to them. Others, the structure is just a little bit different.
Oh, Tori, you're gonna have to speak up louder. Thank you.
I'm not a loudspeaker, so I'm sorry.
That's okay, let's change spots.
I'll just, so back in, kind of our organization, the Directors Association was established back in 1982, and really, the reason that it was established really was to kind of pull all of our organizations, county juvenile departments together, and look at kind of what our standards are and how we want to professionally deal with youth across our state. And so it's really driven by how we want staff to be trained, and how we want to be guided by research and education. And I'll tell you, back in 1982, there wasn't a lot of research, right? So you know, we're putting this thing together really kind of more around training. And I wasn't there in 1982, and hopefully you weren't either, right?
I actually
I was a
was
junior in
not.
high school in 1982. So, definitely was not there. I was probably one of the juveniles. And so really it was just kind of what's that professional development going to look like, and wanting to be, you know, have an established professional organization. Next one.
Actually, interestingly, interesting fact for Clackamas County, the Clackamas County Juvenile Director at the time in 1982 drafted the Articles of Incorporation.
Don Welch,
Correct.
yes. He was a lawyer.
And he was a lawyer.
The vision and mission of the Directors Association, the vision is to be the leading voice in juvenile justice. And really that's by shaping state policy and local juvenile justice policy by practices and promoting safety, the reduction of crime. That is, you know, one of our primary functions as a juvenile department is really reducing crime and addressing those issues. But do that by utilizing evidence-based practices, providing that leadership and strategic direction for a fair and equitable juvenile justice system.
Go for it.
I also used to do some teaching at the community college on juvenile delinquency, and so just some really bullets, right? Really kind of, why did it start? Where did it start? And so, and I don't need to go through each one of those, but really it started a long time ago, and really it was around the realization that kids need to be treated differently than adults. And so that started back, you know, kind of, they say the first probation officer was this John Augustus, and basically said, hey, judge, I can take this person and do some good with them. And so that's was kind of the first thing of that. You know, and then it kind of grew from there. First juvenile court established in Chicago, you know, about 50 years later. And then, you know, really started seeing states pull out kids and treating them differently than they treated adults. Next slide. And then just some important things that the courts decided for juveniles in regards to rights. And Regault in 1967 really just said you have the right to due process. You know, that you have the right to have you know, an attorney, or the right to be able to be have evidence and have the rights of liberty, have the right to not lose liberty. Sorry. And then the Bill of Rights in 1969 gave you all of those protections if you're a juvenile. And then the other important ones around if you were going to court, that it was going to be required that they prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. Preponderance of the evidence is a much lower standard, and so this kind of raises same level similar to adults. And then
I think the big one for us in this one is really us. We come into the story in 1974.
Yeah.
So the Youth Development Council and Youth Development Oregon monitors money through OJJDP, through the act in 1974. And we talk about the deinstitutionalization. Lindsay is very familiar with this act in working with all of across the state for the deinstitutionalization of status offenders and the separation of juvenile and adult offenders. And then disproportionate minority contact came a little bit later, but has been a key core. I don't remember which one it was studied, but anyway, you'll hear often Anya and I talk about this. This is why when we went back in May, we did the Hill tour, and Paulo and Brian joined us on that. Is the re-upping of that act.
So there's 11 detention centers in the state of Oregon, and we get audited each year about who comes into our detention centers in relation to that act. And that's one of the things that the Youth Development Oregon monitors, to make sure they're not bringing kids in that we shouldn't be. Go ahead. Just terminology, differences between adults and juveniles, just kind of, you can see on the left side, just a different language for juveniles that we use when a youth is arrested. That's a referral. So when we talk about referrals, that's meaning that police involvement with youth, and they're sending us some report that would have that. Petitions are something in a formal process that district attorney usually provides some language on that, and then the juvenile department or the district attorney's office would file that with the court, and that would be in a court process. When youth are at the point where they're going to, kind of admit or deny a charge, that's kind of the pleading of that, and they admit or deny, they don't plead guilty or innocent. Sam, your question.
So could you go back to the previous? Like there was also another one where Supreme Court said juveniles couldn't be sentenced to death, right? Isn't that a major one? That's a major difference between juveniles and adults, right?
Yeah,
That's relatively new.
Yeah.
That was more recent. Yeah, that life sentences or right.
I think that's a very, like.
Yeah.
Juveniles can't be put to death.
We consider when a youth is found guilty or adjudicated, it's called an adjudication, not a conviction. The trial phase is called a fact finding. And when we look at kind of the adult system, when the court is hearing a case, there's a lot of information, as you heard this morning, that the judge wants to take into consideration, which is very different than the adult system. And so Christina could talk about, as a prosecutor in the adult side, there has to be what they call a nexus between what they got arrested for and kind of what that sentence looks like. Well, in juvenile court, it's a much broader. We don't have to have, for example, if you have a kid that comes in on a theft charge, but they have drug and alcohol issues, we will get drug and alcohol issues as part of their probation, which that would be very difficult to do in the adult system to make that connection. And that's really because that's a holistic approach that we want to take with juveniles and reforming, making sure they're getting the education and the interventions they need so that they're not continuing down the path that they're on. Kind of the sentencing and the adult language is called the disposition in juvenile, in the juvenile process. And really that's just when we're setting in the court process what those rules are going to be that they're going to be following for whatever period of time that is. And then the diversion is the same language. In juvenile system, it's called a formal accountability agreement, is one form of diversion. And that's those kids that come in that are never going to see court. They're coming in, usually the formal accountability involves some education, maybe some community service, education could be classes. Sometimes they write an essay. I mean, there's different forms, and it's really very broad on what those look like. There's not a standard, this is what all FAAs include. It's really broad based on what the interview is with the family, what the needs are, and what the person doing the interview believes would be helpful to make the connection of the behavior and the outcome, and kind of how can we kind of move that youth forward so they don't commit the same mistake again. And then there's other forms of everything. We also have the juvenile system. It could be peer courts, community justice courts here in Clackamas County, or what do you call them here? Community.
We used to have community impact panels.
Okay. And so that varies across the state and are called differently across the state. But all of those essentially are pulling that youth away from the formal court system, giving them an opportunity to make some corrections in the community. About 80% of the kids that we see in the juvenile system, we only see once. So we've gotten something and they come in, they, do what they need to do and we don't see them again. And then county juvenile departments serve over 90% of all kids involved in the juvenile justice system. And so, we talk about your county juvenile departments, they're serving the vast majority. The kids that are with the Oregon Youth Authority are the most costly because of the residential treatment components and the close custody is expensive. But that's a very small percent of the population. And we talked about 36 counties. All of us have county juvenile departments. We talked about 90%, over 90% of the kids are involved with the county juvenile departments. And then, when I started back in 1995 in juvenile department, that was back shortly after Senate Bill 1 was passed, which created Measure 11, and the idea of the super predator, was happening, and how we needed to really crack down on juvenile crime. And so that was what I came into as a probation officer, that, it was tough on crime and that's how it was going to go. And it's a very vastly different system now. And I think part of that is the research that's been able to have happened between 1995 and today. A lot of research around adolescent brain development, the developmental approach, what works with kids and what doesn't, really provides a stable basis for juvenile departments now to kind of really look at a more holistic picture of that. We've had some, encouraging things around the changing of Measure 11 to kind of pull kids out of that recently, and that's something that was supported by the Juvenile Directors Association as well in that process of understanding that that's probably not the best outcome for kids in most cases. And there is still a process to do that if needed, but over the last 3 years now, it's a very small.
21, yeah.
Probably less than 10 kids have been waived.
I think there's 3.
23. Those are 20 kids.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
There used to be 32 Measure 11 kids sitting in Multnomah County detention. They had I can remember 32 at one point, waiting to get through the adult court process. And that was like in 2016.
And it's a long process when that happens. That's
that David, 32 waiting
at one point.
at one point.
Yeah, just in that facility.
Just in one county, yeah.
And so when that would happen, that court process, you're talking probably close to a year.
On a good day.
And so that was obviously part of the concerns around that. Having kids sit in detention for that length of time is not a good outcome for anyone. And so really trying to figure out how we can better assess kids and serve them better in the community. Hopefully preventing them from entering the adult system.
I think we're at like 40 to maybe 50 DOC youth in our facility now.
And it used to be,
Half our population. Because I don't know the numbers more, but
Used to be about 300.
used to be about 300, and I would say 40 to 50. I don't know the exact number,
And then
but
the
right in there.
early 2000s, it was probably more like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So has the recidivism to jail been, how's that been? Those numbers are lower. Are there less youth going on and to being in the adult system, or are those numbers down?
There's definitely many less kids in the system.
Right.
Clint talked about 400 kids, in the facility, that's half.
Right, but I'm saying the percentage of those that might come to this interface.
So.
Like who's refunding it for?
To be one of the really significant challenges in this particular piece is about the same time. Because you're right, it was 2020. About the same time is COVID hit, and that is a blip in data right now across everything judicial, like justice piece. So we'll have to kind of wait and see, but our recidivism numbers across the state haven't seen a big spike. But what you're asking is the adult charges. Have there been adult charges coming later? We probably won't know that for another 36 months. I would
Yeah,
say.
that is what I'm really
Yeah.
interested in, is that really, because the goal is that it's not just about, I mean, if it's about keeping them out of juvenile, then that should translate. I am doing this perfect world, but we would hope that that would have a translation on
Reduction on the impact.
reduction on the.
So I think we're just too early into it, and there was this incredible, crazy data problem called the pandemic. And so I just don't know that we're gonna know that, but so far, just at the county level, we have not seen an increase in recidivism amongst our youth. So if that's a precursor then for looking at it a little bit later, that's it's in the right direction.
Debbie or Clint could probably talk about what, what the recidivism rate for kids leaving the organizatory under the adult system. Do you know?
I don't,
About number of that?
I don't know our DOC numbers. I know our probation is somewhere in the 20% range, 23, 25. Our parole youth is a little bit higher than that. I do know that we've had some problems with recidivism because we do matching data to look into the adult system, and we've had some struggles with DOC and matching data. So they're trying to sort through that. So our recidivism numbers are not as solid as they used to be, but I know when Senate Bill 1008, kind of the change you were talking about of not automatically charging youth was going about, our research department did do research and was able to show that youth that released directly from our facilities, as opposed to going to DOC and releasing from a DOC institution, the recidivism was like double for youth that released from a DOC institution. It was a significant difference for sure. I don't know if
And that's
that
been
sounds.
consistent over
Yeah.
several divisions.
Yeah, and that was like probably 20 years of data, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you saying that adult prisons don't make kids better?
yeah,
Wow, that's a revelation.
I know.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, groundbreaking. Why did it take us from 1995 to 2020 to figure that out?
So kind of just a brief overview of the juvenile justice system. This is very simplistic. Because,
Wow, that's simpler than a lot of them that I've seen.
well,
Good job.
before we had done this presentation, my office manager and myself were like, okay, we're gonna do a schematic. And it's like, okay, if this happens in this, we were like 5 pages wide. Different off ramps and scenarios. And so, the juvenile justice system is very complicated. And it's, we try to make it as simple as we can, but these attorneys get in the middle of things. Muck it all up. But normally for good reasons, for good things. But basically just, the system has a lot of off ramps throughout the system. So a youth gets arrested in the community and immediately that referral comes to the juvenile department. And then we start evaluating kind of what needs to happen with that. And really trying to have more of a risk-based system. So not, for example, in my department back in the 90s, it was if you had a felony charge, you were going to court no matter what, didn't matter. And so, we kind of built our system a little differently to where we're bringing that family and youth in, we're doing the risk assessment on them. And you guys are familiar with the juvenile crime prevention risk assessment, right? So that helps drive our service. So if it's a lower risk kid, even though it might be a felony, we're really looking at how do we handle that kid differently, or what services that they need. If they're a high risk kid, we know that if we don't do anything, we're probably going to see them again. And so we need to get those services in place. But we want to have opportunities for diversion or a form of accountability agreement or other pieces along the way where when they're doing what they need to be doing and they've been successful, that we can kind of try to get them out of our system as we can. I mentioned the deepest end of the system is the Oregon Youth Authority, that youth correctional facility. And so that's kind of the last resort. And there's, different things in statute that kind of talk about, that requiring that we exhausted all community-based resources before we're doing that. And so that's one of the things that the judge reviews as we're in the court process. If we're recommending a commitment to the Oregon Youth Authority, either for a placement or a correctional facility, we have to be able to demonstrate that here's what we've done with this youth, and this is why we're at this point. As part of the judge's findings, what are kind of the efforts that we've made to work with that youth in the community. Yeah, I think that's kind of
Yeah, you got it.
self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wanna talk about
Yeah,
stages?
so I'll take, the juvenile justice information system, often we talk about data and definitely our subcommittee has asked about data in the past. And we look at it. And so Oregon is unique across the country of having one of truly the only county-state partnerships to have built a juvenile justice information system. And being the sole juvenile director here at the time when it was developed.
She's the last woman standing.
It was a lot around, these are our kids. And that we needed to put protections around them. And so even when a young person transitions from Wasco County to Clackamas County, there's still ownership there and communication together. And so it is governed by a partnership at the state level with the Oregon Youth Authority, where there are 5 voting county juvenile directors and 4 or 3 Oregon Youth Authority staff members. There's always 4 there, but 3 voting members. What's unique about that is that it's a system held in a state agency governed by the majority of local directors. Now, the split vote never occurs, so it's not necessarily that, it's still just this really unique thing of shared power. And so that's how all information comes into, and the point of referral is through the juvenile justice information system. And it follows, it's one case follows a youth all the way through. And the other part about it is it allows us to do things like expunction much easier than if we had to call all of the different counties that a young person connected to get there.
On purpose.
I know.
It's not very hard.
Debbie works on expunction.
Yeah. And it just expanded. this
Yeah,
last-
she's just the queen of completing a massive project.
So it is, it's just this amazing system that we're going through modernization, and the modernization has taken how many years?
18 months.
Well,
Starting in
I
2017.
began this journey, I'm the project sponsor, and I began this journey in February of 2016. I'm coming up on my 8-year anniversary, but it's gonna be done in about 2 years.
It's always the answer.
2 years.
It's 18 months. It's always 18.
It's routine. But
You just gotta figure it out.
But the juvenile, actually, we have 3 of the voting members of the Juvenile Justice Information Steering Committee with you today. So that represents the North Coast region. I represent the Central and Eastern region, and Christina is our chair of our Juvenile Justice Information Steering Committee. And so it's been a really unique partnership.
Yeah, Brian just made a good point. We threw around the word expunction, us people that deal with this all the time. And Brian just said, hey, we should do a little check to make sure that everyone knows what expunction is. So Debbie, since you're our
Nothing more
Expunction,
than to talk
expunction,
about
expunction.
expunction. So I'm gonna do the really condensed version. So basically, expunction is the use, right, or ability to have their record destroyed. Can be destroyed in one of 4 different ways, and there are many paths to get to that expunction. It used to be, prior to 2021, all youth had to apply for expunction after a 5-year waiting period. that has changed a lot. Now, there is a lot of system initiated expunctions that occur at preset times. When they turn 18, as long as their case is closed, for lack of a just a brief brevity. And then there's still some, though, if you're adjudicated on a felony or some excluded misdemeanors, that you still have to apply after 4 years for their expunction.
But it used to be everything, even these, Tori, you
Yeah.
were talking about,
Runaways,
formal
curfews.
accountability agreements, pretty minor offenses that happened when they were 14, and then having to wait
Yeah.
5 years, was really.
And collateral consequences on that were significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So this
this
is
was a
big-
huge piece, again, juvenile directors, supported and were on committees to look at that policy and to drive that policy, so. I thought that-
Sam, are you?
yeah.
So like, even for expulsion, is it just juvenile justice or also education?
No, education well, YSEP, education records are exempt.
Okay.
Jada.
I did.
You were looking panicked over there.
There are certain records that are exempt, education, our medical records, a few other things, you know.
DMV,
DMV,
Not
motor vehicle
much.
loading,
Yeah.
gaming,
Hunting and
voting,
fishing.
DHS records, so Department of Human
forensic
Services.
evidence.
Because sometimes we have kids that are in both systems, we only expunge our part of it.
Yeah.
DHS still has their own
Yeah.
system.
Did you have a question?
I just thought the juvenile, your juvenile, that's expunged immediately upon you turning.
That's an urban legend.
Yeah, because I've encountered people who have run into problems, employment, et cetera, later thinking, hey, that's when I was a
Yes.
16-year-old or
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
So how can that, how can that be changed?
It
has
has
been
changed.
It has to, it happens
has.
automatically.
Except for,
So
well,
5 years, I mean.
automatically, in the sense that the youth doesn't have to do anything to make it happen. It does not just happen. There's a lot of work that counties do to expunge a case. But the youth no longer have to apply. If it was never adjudicated, or if they were adjudicated on a misdemeanor or a violation. If you're adjudicated on a felony, you still have to wait 4 years after your probation has been ended, and then you can apply.
Do they understand that?
Well, we've got FAQs and brochures are supposed to be given to help them understand that, so I can't tell you for
Their
sure.
attorneys.
The other thing is it doesn't go backwards, right? So if I'm currently 25 years old and I was involved in juvenile when I was 10 years ago, that is not, you still have to come apply.
Yeah,
Right,
so
it's not
how you want me to move
It's not
forward,
retroactive.
trying to get a job, or maybe I'm in school and I mean, this is a barrier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's why we changed, that's why
it's
it's
changed.
changed.
But I still have to wait.
No. Only if you're adjudicated of felony do you have to wait. All the other ones, you just have to have your case closed and be 18.
Which is the majority of our cases.
Yeah.
Felonies aren't.
See how I'm teasing through this, and I think I'm a fairly bright guy. And,
I will tell people all the time that expunction on the surface sounds really easy, just destroy the record. It's an incredibly complex law. It's very, very complex.
Multiple people have records.
It takes about 2.5 to 3 hours
Yeah.
to work through the entire process.
I
It's
want-
fine. For
An
one,
easy
for one.
one, yeah. That's an easy one.
A
non-complicated one.
But still important.
yeah.
The good thing is that for these kids that aren't grandfathered or it's not retroactive, there have been some clinics that have opened up, I think, Lewis
Youth
and
Rights
Clark.
Justice.
Right to Justice, they're doing clinics, so for these 25, like your scenario, to help them navigate it, because to apply and, I mean, it's so.
And they also
convoluted.
have the right to court appointed counsel now, and they don't have to qualify. They
Right.
just have to apply.
Which
but
they
don't
didn't have before.
qualify.
You look like you're lying because you're like, no, I don't have a crime, right? Because you're thinking about, and then.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of expungement clinics in partnership with Lewis and Clark and Youth Rights and Justice, because community trust, community providers. So we come and like host them, they come and we help them expunge our clinic. And if we know there is any past justice involvement, we will say like, tell your relatives, come to our office, and we will have all afternoon here. Come, you don't need to make an appointment, just come and do it, because we know it's an access information problem. So just really leveraging the community partnerships to get this information out.
I think a gap, though, still in the, I don't know how we fix this, but are those kids who don't have family to remind them, the kid with ADD that still has ADD. There's 4 of them. You know, that it's really hard because it may not occur to them until they've already are down the path of applying for a job and hit that barrier, you know.
And where do you go? Like right now, I want to get my record. I don't have the record. I want to get it expunged.
We know.
Where do I go?
County Juvenile Department.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
let me go down to this
Yep.
place where I've been traumatized and maybe don't feel comfortable to go to.
Maybe.
You know, and try and get their help.
Well,
Well, no, they're just traumatized. Maybe they got help with that, you know.
It's not a happy time to be involved with us.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying they're only.
It's not a pleasant experience.
So so our county's been doing the clinics as well for adults. What's been fascinating about that is we've been doing it in the juvenile department because we're just great partners. And so on the first Thursday afternoon in Wasco County, the line's out our door for adults wanting to get their records expunged. Because it's done, the attorneys come to our office. And so about 2 months ago, I said, hey, are you looking at juvenile records? And they said, oh, we hadn't even thought about them. And I said, oh, start thinking about them.
Is there like a FAQ or
Yeah,
a
we have-
letter that
yeah.
goes out to them to say,
The
hey,
youth.
Yeah.
yeah, hey, guess what? You should,
We do it a couple of
there's
different
time,
times.
you turn 18 and you, if you
Yeah.
have done the following, okay, all right, I'm
And
sure
it's
you all
actually-
way ahead
We
of-
sense that when we close cases, we're
Yeah.
sending that.
It's actually, yeah.
It's required.
Yeah, the
It's
problem,
required.
but to be real,
No,
to
I
get
understand.
at what you're saying to BD, if you're a 14-year-old and you, went into the neighbor's garage and stole the pop cans, that's a burglary.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Now I turn 18.
Now you turn, so you're 14, right?
Right.
And we tell, your case closes when you're 15, right? And our people our juvenile counselor meets with you, they give you all this paperwork, you and your parents, and they say, hey, Tabidi, in 5 years or 4 years now, you can go ahead and apply to have this expunged
In 4 years.
in 4 years.
Something that happened 3 years
Yes.
ago.
Do you think the 15-year-old, when they turn 19, is thinking about what they did when they were 14? No. And the problem is, we're no longer involved.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you go into JGIS and you say, oh, I'm gonna look up Tabiti's phone number from when he was 15, well, now you've moved on, you're in college or whatever, maybe your parents have moved. It's
This
like,
is
it's
my-
such a black.
So there's no way for the exit, if that happens, where I'm filling this out, and granted, in 4 years, you say, okay, we get it done, you submit me, but you check to make sure I haven't done anything else, right?
Yeah.
Then you just,
Well, you would think that this scenario
Check.
that would not be so common now, just because we have so much technology, but then we also have these agreements where we can't touch like school data or like their contact information. So it's like that cross sector, like collaboration is so important so that we can reach out to those youth again. and
That's
find
why
them.
it was super important to make it automatic.
Yeah.
Well, so the next wave is making the felonies automatic in 4 years.
Yeah.
With some
With-
hoops.
yeah.
Maybe
Right,
some-
that's what
started out with.
That's
with
that's
no-
the next.
Yeah.
Sorry to make your head explode.
I might be retired by then.
I mean, granted, you don't have to do something.
That's what, there's a process,
They're
like,
checking.
you're eligible if you have got new felonies or you're in prison right now.
Or certain
you know.
crimes are not expungable.
Yeah.
so Certain sex offenses are not expungable.
Right.
But we're headed in that direction. Like just the first wave of automatic
Yeah.
expunctions, you would not believe, just because the burglary, you were at least involved with this potentially maybe, but truly the MIP kids.
So,
And there's two things that will
Well, help me
keep you,
with MIP.
alcohol,
Minor
minor possession of alcohol.
Okay.
There's a couple things that will keep you out of the military. One is theft,
Mm.
and the other one is possession of marijuana. So you get a possession of marijuana at 12 years old, nothing else after that. That will get you, that will hang you up of getting into the military. And so absolutely, at least we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. So it's still pretty sucky, but it's not as sucky. That's the technical term.
and I'll add as a community provider, like we have all these diversion cases being sent to community providers. Hooray, so now we get all these expungement orders at Latino Network. And we need to report outcomes to our funders and like these many youths are with, so we are also trying to like, so we now need to like keep tallies, like we've needed to involve our evaluator to come to these, to all of this, you know. And many of these youth, like we, not many, but some of them move, we can't get a hold of them, you know, so. And they were sent to us because they were very minor charges, they just, and then they're gone, we need to get their record expunged.
Okay,
So-
we might have a solution to that here in a minute, but let's finish up this, let's finish up the slides.
See what you started.
Well, I'm trying to be quiet. Just maybe the last thing about the juvenile justice information system is, it's very comprehensive. It's complete case management system. So as you know, when we talked about doing a risk assessment and it says, you know, youth demonstrate high risk in these areas, you can build a case plan from that, and a whole check system to be able to do that. So it's not many other in the country, in the United States that has a system as comprehensive as we do, that is able to collect the data that we collect and then being able to put the data back out for us to be able to look at and make some better decisions with.
And that's how we assess the risk, is using those tools and JJ's.
Yeah. Funding comes from a variety of different sources. Obviously, our county general fund is a primary source, and then some counties have, like my county has a law enforcement levy, which really funds about 80% of our department and detention center. And then we have some funding streams that come through the state, and that's come in the form of diversion fund, basic service dollars, and individual service dollars. And those really are tied to are keeping youth out of the Oregon Youth Authority system. And so those funds that's what they're targeted for, is to keep kids out of that deeper end of the system. So it's either you can use some of those for more preventative services. For example, my basic service dollars in my county, I have some intervention specialists that go into our Albany middle schools, and they do evidence-based group with kids that are not involved with our department at all, but look like they're kind of on the way. And so each county kind of determines their own how they're going to spend those dollars, and there's a plan similar to what you guys review through the Oregon GCP funding plans. We also do a plan for the Oregon Youth Authority that says how we're going to spend those funds, and then and they're pretty strict on the receipts and where we're going, where that money's going. So it's a good thing. Youth Development Council, you guys are all familiar with that. Juvenile crime prevention funding, and then making grants that also happens. And then all of us at county juvenile departments level often are looking at different federal grant opportunities for TA, or to start a different program, or doing some different projects that we're working on individually within our counties. Detention, I mentioned there's 11 detention centers in Oregon. They hold youth that are pre-adjudicated, also adjudicated youth, so pre-adjudicated, charged but not gone through a court process yet, adjudicated youth who have been already on probation, placed on probation by the court, probation and parole violators, and then out-of-state runaways can be housed at a detention center. Many of our detention centers have a 30-day extended detention program. That's something that comes through Youth Development Oregon. And so each detention center that has that has a plan. They have to be reviewed every 2 years.
6 years.
3 years about ish.
Unless they're making changes, it's a self-report to us.
And so and really it's not supposed to be just an extra 30 days of detention. There's supposed to be a program in place. And so for example, in my county, our 30-day program involves a social worker that comes in, meets with the family, the probation officer, a detention worker weekly, and then that youth is kind of, it's like a 1 hour visit with the family 1 week, and then it builds up to where they're back to released home at the end of 30 days. And then our social worker continues to work with them for 4 to 6 months after they're released from detention, really to kind of work on the family system stuff. But again, that's different in each of those programs. And Anya would have all of that information for all of the detention centers that are running those, if that was something you're interested in.
Tori, how many 30-day detention program on your plate? How many of the?
Five
counties?
current, I was gonna say, so there's five, I thought there were six, but five currently.
Thanks.
Anya mentioned the detention guidelines, I think earlier, or maybe Molly did. We've had detention guidelines in place for a long time. I don't know when they started, probably in the 80s.
Yeah.
But just updated those in 2020, and really kind of like what are best practices, what we're doing with kids while we have them there. We have kids who are limited time, probably the average around the state is probably around a week. The average length of stay for youth in detention. For those kids that are very serious crimes, they're going to be longer. We've had kids, as I stated, in over a year for certain crimes as they're kind of working through that court process. But the average length of stay is about a week for kids. Some kids are there for less than 24 hours. And so what do we do with those kids while we have them in that short period of time? What are the seeds that we're planting for change for them? And then how do we follow up with that? Each detention centers were required by law to have an education program in place. And so they get 5.5 hours of school a day, 220 days a year, which is about 40 days more than your school districts provide. So we kind of consider ourselves year-round school. And so, and again, that's going to look differently. The detention education programs are contracted through the Oregon Department of Education, either a school district or a ESD education service district hold those contracts to provide that education facility. And so the juvenile department then operates the facility, but they're not responsible for the education component in that, although we are very active in what that looks like in most of our sites. And then we do a lot with cognitive behavioral interventions about kids. Anytime we're seeing kids, like how are we working with them on their thought process and connecting actions with consequences or behavior. Next one. Probation services, we talked about assessing risk. Really the role of a probation officer / juvenile counselor, that name is shared across the state. One or the other of those are both in statute. But really their role is really to investigate, make an investigation of why this youth is coming before the court or then referred to our department. So that's the biggest component that they do. And then they, if a kid is going to court, they're developing those recommendations to provide to the judge, as you kind of heard a little bit about that today. And then the state as a whole went through a process, effective practices in community supervision, and that's an evidence-based model that the state the Oregon Juvenile Directors Association has kind of put forward. And really that's, again, as we meet with kids, what are we doing when they're there? And so I remember when I started as a probation officer, I'd check in with the kid, would be, hey, how's it going today? Or how's your week been? And did you go to school? It's checking off the box of what their probation says on their probation. Did you go to school? Did you commit any crimes? Did you go to work crew? Did you go during alcohol services, right? So with the EPICS model, it's really, we do that check-in still, but then we're going to do some skill building with that youth while we have them. And then we're going to give them some homework. So then that next check-in, we're going to check in about how the homework went, and then, do the check-in, see how the homework, whatever skill that they're working on, whether that's introducing themselves to a stranger or, anger, how they're handling their anger, or whatever skill that they're working on, how that looks. And then, we're going to continue to kind of do that process as well. Case planning, we talked about attaching those to the risk assessments that we do. And then really the positive youth development strategies. And then, the developmental approach obviously has been something that we've all been talking about around, taking kids where they're at. And, does it make sense for a 12-year-old to have the same expectations as an 17-year-old, and really making sure that we're meeting them where they're at developmentally. And then, monitoring and, there is some accountability in public safety. That's our role in the system as that part of it. And I think some people confuse, maybe not confuse, but associate accountability with punishment. And that's not, it doesn't have to be that way. Certainly it can be that way. And in the past, it has been that way. Where we were, in 1995 when I started. But really now when we talk about accountability, it's also about what are the interventions that we're using, and it's a teaching moment for youth around, you are accountable for your actions. But punishment isn't the only objective here. It's really learning and figuring out what you need to do differently, what skills you don't have, what do we need to work on to get you to a point where you're in, being a good public member of our community.
I think the last slide.
Is that the last one?
I think there's one more.
No. I don't think our community-based programming, again, most of the kids we see, we don't see more than once, and most of them are going through a diversionary type of process. And so, we have community service available or work crews that, as we talked about that accountability piece, you've created some disturbance in our community to come to the attention of law enforcement. And so how do you repay that back to the community? And so that's kind of where that piece comes in. We talked about, peer courts, those community-based panels, restorative justice. Again, that's something I think all juvenile departments are incorporating within different aspects of that, restorative justice practices, education and programming. We know that education is a primary component in everything that we do, and attaching kids to schools and having them be successful in the educational program. And so we know by research that if kids are successful in school, they're much less likely to come to CS or continue in our process with that school attachment. So you'll see that across the state and all county juvenile departments. Education is the primary focus when we're working with kids. And then evidence-based groups that different things that we can provide. Girl Circle Voice Council. It's also a unity circle, aggressive replacement therapy, multisystemic therapy, family functional therapy. And those are very high level evidence-based programs, and they're also really expensive to implement and difficult to implement. So, some of the larger counties, you might see some of these things. In smaller counties, you're probably not, but you might see pieces of those that they're able to perform within their counties. And then offering different educational programs for kids as that development process. So, whether that's an education on drugs and alcohol or property offender class or something where they're going to and they're actually hearing from community members the impact that crime has had on them, or some personal stories that would kind of help connect them like that. Mediation services are also something that's pretty widely used across the state for juvenile departments, and connecting offenders with victims and make amends for what's happened with them. Last slide. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask and just hold space. Anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot. And it's been a lot for today, but it felt like all three kind of legs needed to be brought forward to really be able to talk about our charge at the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee for YDO. Any questions for Tori?
I have two.
Yeah.
So what percentage of those you said not a lot come back. So what percentage do come back? And then the second question, I'm looking at the clock, is how has the mediation strategy worked out? I like that, but then how I've been on a lot of data questions, but how long have you been doing that? And have you been tracking data on how that impacts those different things?
Yeah, I don't know that we're tracking that across.
I don't know. I think the piece that really, you're asking great questions, and I'm gonna give you a really good resource for it. Oregon Youth Authority. The Oregon Youth Authority publishes by county the data reports at the OYA website, and we can get that link out to everybody. But you can look at recidivism, detention, referrals. It's broken down by age, gender identity, race and ethnicity, recidivism, chronic recidivism, like. There's, the data is, when we were talking about the juvenile justice information, I'll bring some of those back to maybe just, or connect up with you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
because-
relate it to the different things that you specifically outlined.
Yeah, so because we're a local-based system, the 36 counties, each of the counties has the opportunity to invest in kind of their own programming. And we have the second smallest county in the state here, and my guess is in Gillum County, the juvenile department offers most of those services. Where in Clackamas County, we're able to reach out to CBOs and do those services, but Gillum County doesn't have
Anything.
You just summed that up.
Very good.
Yeah, for Wasco County, 4 years ago, we implemented a program. Not much unlike what Clackamas County's program. And we've dropped our referrals to our department 68%.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note the recidivism based on referral, not adjudication.
Yeah.
So if you, in a county where you have lots of police activity, writing referrals, kids are gonna have a higher rate sometimes.
So
There's definitely some pieces that go into that recidivism rate, you know, around. Ours, you know, when the police have a lot of layoffs, there's less people out, you know, or as policies change within departments, you know, their focus areas change, and so the referrals may go up or go down. Based on that as well, but I think the state average, the last go was about 75% did not recidivate.
yeah, I think it's between 74 and 77% didn't recidivate, so that meant, but again, looking at the data, chronic reoffenses is even like less than 10%.
Oh, it's.
6 to 9.
Yeah, it's very small, but
Yeah.
But we do that on the county level. It's a great question, and that's part of the juvenile crime prevention funding that we put out. Is we have to respond to the subcommittee on what we're measuring. And so, and we received a great big federal grant, so I had the capacity to do data. But for our one program, it was a 68% reduction. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But we don't have that across all 36 counties. Okay. And I wouldn't have had it without.
I'm just thinking about a few things, so this is good.
Yeah. No, those are really, really good questions. Any other questions or comments? On this massive system?
I have a correction.
Yeah.
You were correct. We have 6 extended detention. facilities. Right. 2 will need to reapply this year. And we just got a communication from another one that has never had, to my knowledge, an extended detention. Lane County will be
The ones
applying
from
for.
So
So it's an ongoing process.
we laid this massive foundation today, which is awesome. Because we have 3 major things going forward to talk about at this particular subcommittee. One is extended detention applications. I knew there were 2 that needed to be done. And so I would like to ask, I would like to ask the committee's approval or lack of objection to connect up with the 2 counties that are up for reapproval. And then if Lane County wants to do it, to start looking, to know that we're getting ready to develop the application. We need to update the application. So I would like to, at our February meeting, focus on looking at the application for 30-day extended detention so that we can get those facilities in the process. And the reason that's important is sometimes judges ask if the program is is certified by the Youth Development Council. Has a 30-day extended detention program been certified? And so to be able to answer a judge or defense attorney's request, we need to have those done. So if everyone is okay, unless I hear objection, that will be on the agenda for February is the application process for those 30-day extended detention. The next is the detention guidelines. And so I have a homework assignment for everyone is to take a look at the detention guidelines between now and the February meeting. And do 2 things. One, kind of feel for where you're at on jumping in on it. And number 2, helping develop a timeline at the February meeting of updating the detention guidelines. So we need to get a timeline in place, and this is also very important because before the pandemic, it was the detention facility that I have a major role in, got called to the carpet by Disability Rights of Oregon. And we got called to the carpet justifiably. And one of the things that we were called out on is that we don't have any way of checking ourselves to standards. And so we had gone through this entire process. Anya had done hours and hours, and Doug Thomas from OYA had done hours and hours of work. And we went to one facility. Thank you, Tori. And he didn't even ever get a report because it happened on January 31st of 2020. And we shut her down on February.
I think I got something.
Well, I think we give you the draft, but I don't think we ever, as a committee, we were never able to reconcile it because we didn't meet anymore. Yeah,
That meeting, DRO attended with us.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Sarah came.
Right.
Actually, at that moment in time, she was no longer with DRO. She had just transitioned to head of staff for Multnomah County's commissioner. She had just changed positions and COVID had hit. So yeah, so DRO, Sarah Radcliffe had been a partner of that. So Sam was on that too. And then there's a third thing that is really exciting that I would like everyone to be able to take the opportunity to look at. And one of the reasons we really wanted to do the juvenile justice overview is, I don't know, sometime in 2023, several of us went to Baltimore to participate in a probation reform, and we were selected through the Annie Casey Foundation to be a probation reform state. And in doing so, we'll have the opportunity to do some additional work in that. More to come on that. But that's the third kind of big thing that we would like to task and take on. Okay.
Strategic action plan for 2020.
So that's in the final thing. So that then becomes the final thing is as we roll all of those things together, Anya is going to be getting to the point where she needs to write the strategic action plan for the federal OJDDP dollars, title dollars starting in the springtime. Do we have a due date yet? No,
They
haven't released the due date, but everything we do should inform that strategic plan. And that will be due sometime before June 30th. So, does that sound like a plan for everyone? Sounds like a lot of work and it sounds like a ton of fun.
Wow. I can't wait to get me some detention guidelines.
I'm gonna thank
Saturday night here.
I know. I just wanna close and just hold the space for any kind of just comments and then I'll close it out. And if anyone online wants to comment, please raise your hand and we'll make sure. Anybody else have any comments?
I have a comment. I really, really appreciate everybody being willing, who's here and who's online, being willing to come here and participate. We don't get a lot of visitors here in Clackamas. So it is really, I'm somebody, I need that live interaction and nothing against, I wish I could be there with all of you and you all have good reasons you have to be on video. So no disparagement here, but it just really is powerful when you get to be in a room with folks and share learning and experience things together. So thank you for taking the time to come here. And I'm sorry, I'll have to mail your award to you for the most traveling.
Oh,
Amy. But anyway, so thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A huge shout out also, Amy, just recently, Gillum County, made the choice to go to circuit court. And so, that is a huge kudos for, a county really looking at professionalizing and moving, juvenile into the circuit court system. And so, I got to sit and participate with two of my colleagues, both Amber and Amy, and I'm just in awe of them and how professional they were in the meeting. So nicely done, Amy.
Yeah, I don't think most people know. I remember being in the Judicial Summit event last year for the Juvenile Delinquency Improvement Project, and Amy speaking of about the county court system and how, and I mean, I remembered this, reading that statute like 20-something years ago, thinking, oh, that's crazy, Bill, oh, whatever. Then I got involved with juvenile departments and I became as a director. And when you brought it up, it's sort of like cobwebs out of my mind. But people that aren't even lawyers, and I don't think lawyers are superior, by the way. I've got Tori behind me here. People who have no training, no requirements, no licensure, no having to go through the hoops of obtaining
A law
legal
degree.
expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, are actual county judges in a handful of counties.
You just have to be voted into the position and then you can sit in her juvenile cases.
Yeah, that's scary to me. And, yeah, so Amy, brought this up and people's jaws dropped in this meeting. Even on video, you could feel it, like people are like, holy moly. So the work you did, your advocacy and not giving up and fighting the good fight and having to put up with a lot of not pleasant, backlash from some folks in the community. I mean, I just really, to me, that's courage and leadership in action, so. God,
With that, yes.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I really appreciated having the Latino Network Youth Empowerment come and chat with us. Keep doing the work. It sounds like you're collaborating with a lot of other community organizations, and so thank you for filling those voids that are most needed.
Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
And if I can just also say something here online, it was just actually being on this committee so helpful to hear about the probation process and to also hear the learned lessons from the past and what is happening now. But I was also going to say it was really good to hear from Latino Network. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it was very good. I'm going to keep us in. Do I have any housekeeping things?
Probably decide on the next meeting here.
So we have good turnout today. To me, this is the wrong time for you, isn't it? On the Mondays.
You know, it worked today.
Okay.
It was a research day for me, and I used part of it for this. Mondays, I start the week kind of, but we'll talk about it.
Okay, so can we do a doodle poll for the group? And
Yeah, let's
really,
do a
I would like
doodle poll.
to consider Tuesdays, I think might be a better day.
Fridays are fantastic.
Right.
Saturday.
Let's do a doodle poll for that first week of February. We need to keep it moving, so let's do the doodle poll and we'll keep it within the.
We'll do the
They're usually.
Right, and I've been coming here and there. It's been a little bit of
Yeah.
problem. One is okay because they don't have an hour time. Tuesday between 12:30 and 1:30 or 12 and
Lindsay,
2
thank
is
you.
fine.
Join us. We didn't join us to help you take care of yourself. And thank you, Kitchen and Lindsay.
Thank you.
And if you forgot to sign in,
Please sign in.
Please sign in on the food table. So that I don't get off.
Outside for you.
There's something.